Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Tuesday, the 18th of November. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's special envoy is now in Moscow for a week-long trip to Russia as Pyongyang seeks to bolster bilateral ties amid its soured relations with China. All 15 convicted crew members of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry, including the captain, lodge appeals against their sentences, which range from 36 to 5 years behind bars. Plus, a Frenchman and 2 men from Britain are believed to be among the killers on an Islamic State propaganda video showing a beheaded American aid worker and the deaths of more than a dozen Syrian soldiers. Our top story this morning: the special envoy for North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has arrived in Moscow within the last couple of hours. Choi was originally scheduled to arrive in the Russian capital on Monday afternoon local time, but he was reportedly forced to return to Pyongyang due to plane trouble. The unforeseen delay is likely to push back planned talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin that were thought to be set for later on this Tuesday. There is speculation that Che will pass on a personal letter from Kim Jong-un if he meets with Putin. During his 8-day trip, Che is expected to discuss ways to boost economic and political ties between the two countries, as well as Pyongyang's nuclear program. Now, it's the generally considered view that the North Korea-China relationship has deteriorated somewhat since Kim Jong-un assumed power in the north some 3 years ago. One giant indication of this is a multi-million-dollar bridge, which was supposed to boost trade between the two once strong allies, but is now just sitting idle long after its scheduled opening date. Our Park Ji-won has this report.
This is the new Yalu River Bridge, linking the northeastern Chinese city of Tandong to North Korea's border city of Sinŭiju. The 3-kilometer-long structure was scheduled to open late last month, but Chinese state media reports the opening has been pushed back indefinitely. China footed the entire cost of the $350 million project, expecting the bridge to boost bilateral trade. But after 4 years of work, facilities and roads linking the bridge into the border cities remain unfinished. Satellite images taken in September also show that North Korea hasn't started building customs facilities. Compared to pictures taken in October of last year, we see no improvements at all. In fact, some buildings have been torn down during the time.
China and North Korea delayed laying roads linking the bridge to the cities because Beijing is not happy with Pyongyang's nuclear programs, and North Korea is unhappy with its current relationship with Beijing. I don't think the bridge will open until the latter half of next year.
Watchers say the hold-up completing the bridge, which was supposed to handle some 80% of goods passing between both countries, reflects the sour relations between the once strong allies. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
Now back here in South Korea, and all 15 crewmen of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry, including the captain, Lee Jun-sok, have appealed against their guilty verdicts for doing nothing to save the passengers in that deadly sinking. The Gwangju District Court said on Monday that Lee Jun-sok submitted a request for an appeal with the court, while some of the other crewmen finished the appeal process late last week. The captain, was sentenced to 36 years in prison, and 14 crew members were given jail sentences ranging from 5 to 30 years. State prosecutors, who had demanded the death penalty for the captain, who you can see there, also filed an appeal last week, calling the ruling giving him 36 years in prison regrettable. More than 300 people died when the ferry capsized in waters off Korea's southwestern coast on April 16th. Korea's rival parties have agreed on 3 welfare revision bills that will expand the number of people entitled to social security benefits. The National Assembly's Health and Welfare Committee on Monday reached an agreement on revisions to the National Basic Living Security Act, the Emergency Aid and Support Act, and a motion to create a law that would support more people with social security provisions. This agreement came after the ruling Saenuri party accepted the main opposition party's proposal that the revisions will require an additional $230 million in government funding. The ruling party had been arguing before now that the additional funds should not exceed $180 million. The committee will hold a vote on the agreement on Friday. Now, there's a saying that there's no such thing as a free lunch, but there is for the majority of school students here in Korea. And new figures show government spending on the nation's free school meal program has jumped nearly 5-fold since it was introduced back in 2010. Central and local government officials say the budget set aside for this year's meal program was over $2.3 billion. The number of students getting these free school meals has also jumped from roughly 1.4 million in 2010 to 4.5 million this year. That means some 70% of elementary to high school students in Korea have their meal provided for free. The program has been at the center of deep controversy over the years, with conservative education chiefs saying free meals should only be given to students from low-income families. Now, Japan's economy has unexpectedly slipped into recession. This has set the stage for Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to call possibly a snap general election, and sources in Tokyo say Abe plans to schedule the election for the middle of December. Our Song Ji-son reports.
Japan slipped into an unexpected recession in the third quarter after logging negative growth for the second consecutive quarter. The world's third largest economy marked negative 1.6% growth for the July to September period, far below the market expectation of a 2.1% bump. In macroeconomics, 2 or more consecutive quarters of economic contraction typically signals recession. While exports and consumer spending returned to gains last quarter, they weren't strong enough to offset the impact of a slump in stocks of unsold goods, which means companies can't move forward with additional production. This follows an over 7% yearly drop in the second quarter, recorded right after Tokyo hiked its sales tax from 5% to 8% in April. That was the biggest fall since Japan's deadly earthquake and tsunami in March 2011. Monday's figures pushed the benchmark Nikkei down nearly 3% to just below 17,000, with the Japanese yen exchanging at a 7-year low at lower than 117 yen against the greenback during trading. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is widely expected to call a snap election as early as mid-December, in hopes of delaying an increase in the sales tax to 10% next year. The hike was legislated by the previous administration to curb Japan's huge public debt. Japanese lawmakers say postponing the planned increase by a year and a half could add about 0.5% to growth. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
Now, back here in Korea, and fines imposed by foreign antitrust watchdogs on Korean companies for price fixing have unfortunately surged in recent years. According to data released by Korea's Fair Trade Commission, local firms have been fined $1.5 billion since 2012 on charges of rigging prices and other cartel activities. The amount represents nearly half the penalties that Korean companies were ordered to pay since 1996, when the Commission started collecting this sort of data. The penalties include a ruling by the EU in 2012 when it ordered tech giant LG Electronics and also Samsung SDI to pay $630 million and $190 million each, respectively, for colluding to dominate the market of cathode ray tubes. These are the tubes used for making TV screens. Right, well, let's get a check on the global headlines we're following this Tuesday morning in Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark.
So, the parents of American aid worker Peter Kasich have been paying a fine tribute to their son, who was so cruelly murdered by the group that calls itself Islamic State.
Indeed, they held a press conference just a few hours ago. They remembered their son, 26-year-old Peter Kasich, as both an idealist and a realist who overcame the darkness he witnessed in Syria as a soldier by choosing to believe in the good in people in his work as an aid worker. Let's go ahead and hear a piece of what they had to say.
Our hearts are battered, but they will mend. The world is broken, but it will be healed in the end. And good will prevail, as the one God of many names will prevail.
Paula and Ed Kasich at a United Methodist Church in Indianapolis also asked for time to mourn, cry, and forgive the militants who beheaded their only child. Also known by his adopted name of Abdul Rahman after his conversion to Islam, the former U.S. soldier's decapitated head had been shown and identified in the latest propaganda video released by the Islamic State group. Authorities in several countries are studying the 15-minute clip, some of whom believe Europeans were among the knife-wielding extremists, including a 22-year-old French citizen identified as Maxime Houchard and a medical student from Wales. A monitoring group said the jihadists have executed nearly 1,500 people in Syria alone over the past 5 months, since the group declared establishing a caliphate, with more than 60% of those being civilians. The European Commission has applied protective measures against the spread of an avian flu outbreak that has affected birds in the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. The Dutch government had reported the highly contagious strain of H5N8 at a poultry farm, while the Commission said a case at an East Yorkshire duck farm in the UK was probably identical. The strain can be passed on from animals to humans through close contact. Some 150,000 hens at a farm in the Netherlands were being culled as the Commission blocked sales of affected birds and poultry products, as well as draw protection zones. A surgeon who had been flown into the U.S. from Sierra Leone for Ebola treatment has passed away. 44-year-old Dr. Martin Salia was undergoing treatment at Omaha's University of Nebraska Medical Center. Hospital officials said the Sierra Leonean citizen and resident of Maryland, USA, was already 13 days into the disease and in critical condition when he arrived on Saturday. Dr. Salia received a blood plasma transfusion from an Ebola survivor as part of his treatment, as well as the experimental drug ZMapp provided by the manufacturer. He is the 10th Ebola patient to be treated on American soil. And finally, Pope Francis has revealed that he will make his first trip to the United States as pontiff next year, with a stop at a triennial conference in Philadelphia. The World Meeting of Families, which celebrate the importance of families, takes place in the City of Brotherly Love in September of 2015. The city's mayor called it a joyous day, saying the visit will mark Philadelphia's largest event in its modern history. It will be Philadelphia's second papal visit after Pope John Paul II celebrated Mass in the city back in 1979.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. Now, Korea is taking inspiration from other countries around the world in a bid to turn itself into a gateway for global food exports throughout Northeast Asia. This $500 million project is expected to provide a new source of economic growth and hopefully plenty of new jobs. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea has set its sights on the food industry as a new growth engine for the economy and is seeking to develop itself into a hub for the Northeast Asian food market. The Korea National Food Cluster, or Food Palace as it's called, is part of the Korean government's plan to build a food industrial complex that will facilitate business and research activities and become a convenient gateway for global exports. Located in Iksan, Jeollabuk-do province, the site is near major air and seaports and can be easily accessed by the capital via bullet train. And with its proximity to major markets like China and Japan, the government expects a $500 million project to have a substantial economic impact.
The Korea National Food Cluster is expected to generate over $13 billion in sales, facilitate $3 billion in exports, and create 22,000 new jobs a year when it reaches full operation in 2020.
The government has so far signed memorandums of understanding with over 100 local and foreign companies and plans to lure more businesses and investors with incentives such as tax exemptions and state subsidies. Experts, however, say more needs to be done to attract local conglomerates, as foreign companies would prefer to enter Korea through partnerships with domestic firms to hedge risks and costs. They add that participation of universities is also needed to foster talent, and that firms outside of food companies, like those that specialize in consulting or distribution, should be involved as well to create synergy. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, more than 17 million people around the world die each and every year from heart attacks and strokes. And while modern medicine makes it much more likely for survivors to make a full recovery and enjoy active, full lives afterwards, new research suggests more can be done to make sure patients don't suffer a second heart attack. Our Connie Lee has more.
About 1 year ago, 73-year-old Lee Young-ho suffered a myocardial infarction, otherwise known as a heart attack. He immediately underwent a procedure to have a stent implanted that would increase blood flow to the heart and is now fully recovered.
I do aerobic exercises almost every day and don't have problems carrying out daily activities.
However, in another case, a 60-year-old man died 2 weeks after suffering a heart attack and having a similar stent procedure. So why did one person survive while the other didn't? It comes down to the other two major coronary arteries around the one that first caused the heart attack.
The biggest key point is that more than half of heart attack patients had a problem in their other arteries, which in turn affects their death rate.
Dr. Park Do-gu of Seoul's Asan Medical Center was one of the researchers on the team that included doctors from Duke Medicine. The researchers analyzed 28,000 patients for this study and found that within 30 days of a heart attack, patients with more than one clogged artery had a death rate of 3.3%, compared with a rate of 1.9% for those who had just one blockage. The latest research, published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, raises questions about whether and when more procedures for clearing other arteries should be pursued for heart attack patients. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
In other health-related news, research labs and local businesses have uncovered a new source of revenue: medicinal ingredients repurposed for use in cosmetics. The production period is relatively short and the applications are numerous. Our Paulie has this report.
This laboratory develops clinical medicines derived from organic materials. Scientists here try to create functional materials that are good for the body using components extracted from medicinal herbs. Their ultimate goal is to develop new types of medicines, but 30% of the experimental substances they create end up being used as ingredients for new cosmetics. Not only does this keep the products from going to waste, but it's a boon for the lab. Compared to medicines and other health-related products, cosmetics can be made in a relatively short period of time and have several applications.
Cosmetics bring greater rewards and have more growth potential than medicinal products as they take less time to develop.
The lab developed a functional material that was distributed to 10 local mid-sized firms, which produced sales of $21 million last year alone. and sales are expected to grow 13% this year. Korean cosmetics and skincare products have been drawing attention worldwide for their high quality and power to improve the appearance, with a number of Korean cosmetic brands having entered the Chinese market.
We want to promote the high quality and function of Korean cosmetics by allowing Chinese customers to experience and use the products firsthand.
These days, many local mid-sized companies are benefiting from the transformation of functional substances into cosmetics, allowing the companies to expand their business around Korea and beyond. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the South Korean national football team, who's set to face off against Iran later tonight. And after a sloppy 1-0 victory over Jordan last Friday, this match is going to be a lot tougher. Now, with the 66th-ranked Korean national football team facing off against the highest-ranked Asian nation at 51st overall, the Taeguk Warriors have a losing record in the 27 matches they've played, with 9 wins, 7 draws, and 11 losses. Now, at the same time, Korea has yet to win a single match at away in Iran in the past 40 years, as manager Uli Stilke hopes to win their first later tonight. And unlike the match against Jordan, both Ki Sung-young and Son Heung-min are set to start in this match, hoping to give boost to the Korean offense. And now moving over to the LPGA, it took 9 long years, but Korean-American Christina Kim finally won an LPGA title over the weekend at the Lorena Ochoa Invitational. And it wasn't an easy one for the 30-year-old as she finished off the 18th hole tied for first at 15 under par with China's Shen Chen-feng. And after a par putt on the second sudden death playoff hole, she was able to finally win her first LPGA title in 9 years and her third overall. Meanwhile, world number 1 Park In-bi, who finished in third place, now trails Stacey Lewis by 3 points in the Player of the Year race, with the final event coming up this week at the CME Group Tour Championship. Now moving over to the 2014-2015 ISU Short Track World Cup, where the second stage of the season took place in Montreal, Canada. And as for Korea's Shim Seok-ki, she's doing what she does best, win gold medals. Now competing in the women's 1,000-meter event, the 17-year-old Olympic gold medalist comes in first with a final time of 1 minute 30.641 seconds for yet another gold medal. The gold medal finish gives her her 12th straight World Cup event with a gold medal. Now, meanwhile, over on the men's 1,000-meter competition, Shin Da-eun continues his success, adding to the Korean gold medal tally as well. Now, move over Spider-Man, because Korea has their own wall-climbing star, except we'd call her Spider-Woman. 26-year-old Kim Jong-un, who had an incredible season in sports climbing, concluded her 2014 season ranked #1 in the latest World Cup ranking and the world ranking for the second straight year. Now, she enjoyed one of the best seasons ever, becoming the first Asian climber to win the World Championships earlier this year. And now finishing things off in baseball, former Major League pitcher Sonny Kim, a.k.a. Kim Sun-woo, announced his retirement on Monday. The 37-year-old, who played his final season with the LG Twins this year, announced his retirement after his memorable career in both the majors and the KBO. The righty signed with the Boston Red Sox back in 2000 and played for 4 other major league teams, finishing off with a record of 13-13, mostly as a reliever. Now, he would play 7 seasons in the KBO, 6 of which were with the Tucson Bears, finishing his KBO career with a winning record of 57-46. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, lows have dropped to the freezing side again here in the capital, though temperatures are on the rise. But Wind chill is dragging down the sensory temperatures, so be sure to dress warmly before heading out today. Now, lingering morning fog in the capital region will gradually burn off as the day progresses, and there will be nothing but sunshine in the whole peninsula. And this plenty of sunshine will send the temperatures to what it was like yesterday. So let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the daytime high in the capital will rise to 10, while Daegu tops out at 13, and Gwangju and Busan will climb to 12 and 15 under lots of sunshine. Now, as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will be getting up to 14 and 11 later on, while Dokdo see highs of 10. Now, it should get milder as we head into the end of the week. Highs will climb into the mid-teens, so I hope you get to enjoy the last of autumn this week. Well, that's all for now. Let's send it back to Mark in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, as always, for the weather there, Jian. And that's all we have for now. We'll be back with our next newscast in around 90 minutes' time at noon Korea time. Until then, goodbye.